became paranoid. She was talking about how she felt like something just wasn't right with Ashley. She wasn't sure if Ash had her money or not.
Try to kiss you.
Grab me and push him down. I don't think he hit his head on it. I don't know what it was. The blood was coming out.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to take over sitting one of the one-on-ones, and the one I was sitting with, I wanted to freaking strangle.
Tina Herman and her 2 children are reported as missing by friends or family. Tina's manager from work becomes concerned and decides to go to her house to check on her. Upon arriving at the house, the manager discovers bloody stains and immediately becomes worried about the safety of Tina and her children.
Tina Herman had 2 children, a 13-year-old girl, Sarah, and an 11-year-old boy, Cody. She had not come into work on Wednesday. She was a very dependable employee, and it was unusual for her not to show up. When Tina failed to show up for work again, the manager came over to the house. She let herself in through a rear window.
There was blood leading from the front door, through the hallways, back into the rooms and into the bathroom.
We started seeing distinct patterns. We saw 3 separate bloodstain patterns in 3 different rooms. And we saw drag marks from each of those bloodstain patterns that converged into the bathroom.
While conducting a search of the garage, the police discovered a receipt that led them to identify Hoffman as a prime suspect in the case. This receipt was an important piece of evidence that helped them to narrow down their list of potential suspects. Once they had identified Hoffman as a potential perpetrator, they were able to focus their investigation on him and gather further evidence to support their case.
So in the garage, there was a shopping bag, and inside that shopping bag were 2 tarps and a package of heavy-duty garbage bags.
Hoffman, the suspect, was found in his home and arrested. He had a major fetish with leaves, and in his basement, 13-year-old Sarah, Tina's daughter, was found restrained.
Mr. Hoffman had what I would call a fetish with leaves. He was a tree trimmer for a while, and he was oftentimes known to climb trees and be sitting in trees.
I mean, the whole house was full of leaves. There was a dresser pushed against the basement door leading to the basement. And it was only on removing that dresser and going down into the basement that they discovered Sarah.
And I could hear Joe yelling, "They found her, she's alive, she's alive."
And in this basement area, there was a large pile of leaves, and then he had placed a number of blankets on top of that, and that's where he was having Sarah sleep. She was tied with bungee cords wrapped around her feet, her ankles, and her wrists, and she also had, like work gloves over her hands with duct tape.
Despite the efforts of another investigator to extract information from Hoffman, no details about Tina or her son are obtained, even after several hours of questioning. The investigators tried various tactics and techniques, but Hoffman remains tight-lipped and does not provide any useful information. It seems that Tina and her son's whereabouts will remain a mystery for the time being.
You don't really want to walk out in a huff. You have to kind of give the impression that, look, I'm here to try and talk with you. I mean, she has reason to think the worst. The longer she has to kind of ride this roller coaster of uncertainty, wondering what's happened, if she could have done anything, and all that whole package, the worse it's going to be for her. Well, if I don't respond now, I look cold, from his perspective. And if I remain in this cold, unresponsive state, then I just look like I'm cold and indifferent to her. If you didn't care about her, you could have just killed her too. I must have.
I knew I must have done something wrong. And I found her in my house. She tied up. And so I took care of her.
After being in custody for nearly 25 hours, Hoffman is brought in for a second round of interrogation. The authorities are attempting to locate Tina and her son in hope that Hoffman will be able to provide them with more information. This is the reason for the second interrogation.
Where's the sadness coming from?
crazy.
Why do you think that?
Because I must have done something bad. I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
He wants to be taken care of. He wants to be paid attention to. Do you want some pizza? I can put it on there. Especially by a female, and I just fed into him, giving him that focus and giving him that attention so that he would bring his guard down.
When the possibility of the death penalty is removed, Hoffman writes a letter confessing to the crime and revealing the location of the missing bodies, which were placed in trash bags and hidden in a hollow tree in the forest.
Apparently, between the Knox County prosecutor and the attorneys, they had decided on the deal of taking the death penalty off the table. Once the deal was made, that's when he was willing to give up where the bodies were.
Taylor has been unaccounted for and missing for 6 days, according to Cassandra, who is her girlfriend. Cassandra has reported Taylor's disappearance to the authorities and is concerned for her well-being. It is unclear at this time what may have caused Taylor's disappearance or where she could be. Cassandra arrives at the police station to meet with the detectives. She is shown into a room where the detectives are waiting for her. The detectives begin the interview, asking Cassandra questions about the incident in question. The detectives start to zero in on Ashley as a potential suspect. She was the last person to be seen with Taylor before her disappearance, and therefore could potentially hold valuable information. The investigators decide to focus their efforts on questioning Ashley and gathering any evidence that may connect her to the case. A financial investigation involves examining an individual's financial records and transactions in order to gather information about their financial activities. This type of investigation can be particularly useful when trying to learn more about someone like Ashley, as it can provide insight into their income, expenses, assets, and debts. By conducting a financial investigation, we may be able to gain a better understanding of Ashley's financial situation and potentially uncover any suspicious or irregular activities.
That interview was huge because Cassandra said that Taylor had given Ashley money. The money was the biggest red flag that shifted this from a missing person to very suspicious activity, potentially a homicide investigation.
Taylor had given Ashley $34,000 to hold on to.
Cassandra said Taylor gave this check to Ashley because she has a safety deposit box she could put this check into.
Ashley is accused of stealing money. She's also accused of forging a signature. This behavior was discovered after an investigation. Ashley is brought into an interrogation room. The investigator, who is tasked with solving a case or gathering evidence, uses a different method than usual. This method is characterized by a more assertive and confident demeanor.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Ashley MacArthur, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm as charged in the indictment.
When it all came together, it was clear beyond a reasonable doubt that Ashley was guilty. She was immediately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The police received a report from an anonymous caller about a potential body that had been wrapped up and discarded on the side of the road. Upon investigation, the police discovered that the report was true, and that there was indeed a body wrapped in plastic on the side of the road. They immediately began an investigation to determine the identity of the victim and the circumstances surrounding their death. Locke's neighbor was brought in for an interview with the police. This was due to their status as a potential witness or suspect in a current investigation. The purpose of the interview was to gather more information and determine the neighbor's involvement in the case. The investigator arrived at the crime scene, which was located in Locke's house. As they began to search the area, they noticed several pools of blood scattered throughout the room. These pools of blood were clear indicators that a violent incident had occurred in the house. The investigators have been working on the case for some time now and have developed a theory about a possible motive for the neighbor to have killed Locke. According to their findings, there was some sort of dispute or disagreement between the two parties that may have led to the neighbor committing the crime. However, they are still working on gathering more evidence and questioning witnesses to confirm their theory and build a solid case against the suspect. The theory proposed by the group is thoroughly researched and well thought out. After presenting their evidence, it becomes clear that their theory is accurate. As a result, the neighbor who had been suspected of committing the crime confesses and admits to their wrongdoing. The neighbor was taken away by the police for an unknown reason. He was worried about what would happen to him, so he called his wife to let her know what had happened. The police received a report from a local medical center regarding several deaths that may have been caused by abnormal blood sugar levels. The medical center believed that these deaths were potentially linked and wanted to bring the issue to the attention of the authorities. The police promptly began an investigation into the matter, as it was clear that the cause of these deaths needed to be determined as soon as possible. Many of the patients who died had low blood sugar levels. This is significant because low blood sugar levels are usually only seen in individuals with diabetes. However, these patients were not diabetic. The FBI becomes involved in the case due to the severity of the crime. They immediately begin their investigation and gather all available evidence. After reviewing the information, they identify their first suspect as Rita.
Rita Mays was an uncertified nursing assistant who worked in the medical surgical unit that they referred to as Ward 3A. She was responsible for taking the vitals of patients, intake and outtake, as well as taking glucometer or finger stick readings of blood sugar levels of patients.
She denied being in the medication room alone, which we knew was contradictory with what witnesses told us previously. And what's important there is that the insulin was stored in the medication room.
An investigator has proposed that Rita undergo a polygraph test. However, Rita has refused to participate in the test. The polygraph test is a common tool used by investigators to determine the truthfulness of an individual's statements.
I'm not going to find that what you're telling me, I'm not going to find that part of it's not true or all of it's not true.
No, sir. I will swear on this. Swear to it.
Okay, and you
I will
don't know.
swear to it. If we had to go to court, I would swear to it.
Would you be able to take a polygraph concerning this and pass it?
I will not take a polygraph.
Why not?
Why not?
I'm asking.
Because I have a torn ACL and I have constant pain and I wouldn't pass it.
Okay. The pain would make you not pass it.
Yes, sir.
Rita eventually confesses to the crime 3 years later. Before the interrogation begins, we see a brief summary of the events leading up to the present. This includes a 911 call from Megan Zanella, a 13-year-old girl who reports that her sister is stabbing their mother.
911, what is your emergency? What is going on? Hello? My mom was a knife. Who has a knife? My sister.
Sabrina's eunuch, Megan's sister and an adopted foster child, initially claims to have no memory of the previous night's events.
So what do you recall?
Yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Getting done with my homework? Going, I don't know, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bed.
And we were at home?
Mm-hmm.
After 6 months had passed, Sabrina finally revealed the details of her crime to the authorities. It had been a long and difficult process, but she knew that it was important to come forward with the truth. According to Sabrina, her foster father, Kevin, had played a significant role in her decision to commit the crime, and she had been struggling to cope with the abuse and manipulation that he had inflicted upon her for years. Despite the fear and uncertainty that came with speaking out, Sabrina knew that it was the right thing to do, and she was determined to bring Kevin to justice for the harm that he had caused.